The jungle was quiet, eerily so. Mist curled between towering alien ferns, dew clung to blue-veined leaves, and the hum of unseen insects underscored the silence like a heartbeat. Shadows stretched long in the early light of Kepler, 47 CS morning. Nothing moved. Then the forest shimmered, and 7 human figures emerged from the void, ghost-like in their ghillie suits, rifles sweeping in perfect synchrony. Captain Alara Voss raised a gloved fist, halting the squad. Her visor fed her a live readout. Ambient heat signatures. Negative. No movement within a 5-kilometer radius. But she didn't trust it. The NIGMA Empire rarely left anything unguarded, especially a relay tower this central to their command structure. Reaper team, confirm suppression zones, she said, her voice low but sharp through the comlink. South perimeter secured, came Ushvin's reply. The unit's demolition expert and former insurgent leader. 2 mines planted. Motion triggered. If they sneeze, we'll hear it. Eyes on the tower, said Reyes, their sniper. 5 hostiles. 3 drones, circling high. No ground patrols. 2 clean. Voss narrowed her eyes. Which means it's a trap, or it's abandoned. Either way, we go in quiet. Execute on my mark. Above them, barely visible through the canopy, a jagged spire of black obsidian pierced the sky. The relay tower. It was one of 5 across the sector, each responsible for transmitting orders, surveillance feeds, and drone paths across the NIGMA command grid. Voss had seen the schematics 100 times, but seeing it here, on the ground, sent a flicker of tension through her chest. The NIGMA Empire had ruled 2 galaxies for over 1,000 years. Their fleets could erase continents. Their soldiers, bred in sterile chambers, never missed. Their AI-controlled networks predicted uprisings before the first slogan was whispered. And yet, humanity had managed to punch through. Not by strength, by preparation, by necessity. They'd only discovered Earth a century ago, dismissing it as a developing anomaly. That arrogance had bought humanity time. In silence, they'd unified. In darkness, they'd trained. And in the shadows, they'd become something terrifying. Voss gave the signal. The squad broke into formation. They moved like smoke, soundless, calculating, lethal. Reyes dropped the first drone with a subsonic round. No alarm, no movement. One by one, the outer defenses fell. Quiet kills, melted locks, pulse jammers. Within 20 minutes, they were inside the tower's hollow core. Alara placed a compact black device on the main relay conduit. A green light blinked twice. Reaper to command. Package planted. Trigger on your go. General Soren's voice came back cold and clinical. Hold position. Simultaneous uplink in T-2 minutes. Stay sharp. The squad took cover in the shadows. The seconds stretched. Ushvin clicked his tongue once, a nervous tick. You ever think we're the bad guys? Voss didn't answer immediately. She stared at the flickering lights on her HUD, her rifle steady. We didn't start this war. No, Ushvin said. We just finished it before it began. The device pulsed bright green. Above, the sky changed. Orbitals decloaked. Dozens of human warships pierced the atmosphere, unleashing precise beams of antimatter at NIGMA orbital hubs across the sector. Explosions bloomed like dying suns. The jungle lit up. The relay tower erupted in a geyser of flame as Alara detonated the charge. The structure twisted, screaming, before collapsing into itself. They didn't watch it fall. They were already moving, racing through brush and smoke as sirens screamed across the horizon. Extraction in 60 seconds, said Reyes. But we got flyers inbound. Fast. Alara cursed under her breath. Ushvin, light the south line. Now. With a grin, he punched the detonator. The forest behind them turned into a wall of fire. NIGMA drones dove in too low, sensors scrambled by human tech they didn't yet understand. 2 exploded midair. The rest scattered. They reached the LZ where a matte black dropship hovered just above the treetops. A hook dropped. One by one, they latched in, hoisted up. As the last boot left the ground, Voss looked back. The smoke rose high into the sky. The jungle burned. She knew other squads were doing the same thing on other worlds. 5 towers. 5 planets. No warning. No mercy. Back aboard the ship, Voss yanked off her helmet. Her face was pale, jaw set, eyes hard. The screen in front of her showed live feeds. NIGMA worlds in chaos. Military AI shutting down mid-command. Fleets drifting aimlessly. Orders lost in digital silence. Soren's face appeared again, this time on the dropship's console. Phase 1 complete. Phase 2 in motion. You and Reaper team head to Nexus Prime. You're greenlit for a Class C decapitation strike. She nodded. Understood. Ushvin leaned over, watching the screen. We're hitting the throne. Not the throne, she said. The mind. We kill their high strategist. Everything else crumbles. Reyes exhaled. Hell of a way to say hello. The screen shifted to a broadcast feed. Across the NIGMA Empire, in hundreds of languages, a message played on loop. No flag, no music, just one voice, cold and human. We are death. And we've arrived. As the ship vanished into the upper atmosphere, Elara Voss closed her eyes. Day 1 was over. The Empire just didn't know it yet. Aboard the Havoc's Grace, silence reigned in the command chamber, until the screens flared to life. Elara Voss stood at the center, armor still scorched from Kepler 47C, watching as hundreds of data streams poured in. Orbital recon, civilian chatter, intercepted fleet orders, all of it unraveling fast. Command nets breaking apart, muttered Reyes, arms crossed. They're not used to chaos. Ushvin leaned over the console. 500 years of centralized AI command. Take out the core, and they forget how to blink. It was true. The NIGMA had built their empire on cold logic and predictive algorithms, assuming superiority would always translate to control. But when the relay towers fell, the network buckled. Drones awaited orders that never came. Warships drifted, captains paralyzed without consensus from the omnipresent strategist AI. And now, they were vulnerable. Targets? Voss asked, voice clipped. Lieutenant Varda, their tactical analyst, tapped in a sequence. Nexus Prime's outer defense is still up, but they're disorganized. 5 orbital batteries online. No fleet presence. At least, not coordinated. The strategist hasn't reasserted itself. Then we move before it does. The Havoc's Grace turned sharply, her engines growling like a predator. Below, Nexus Prime shimmered. A world of spires and monoliths, seas dyed silver by atmospheric filtration, and, at its heart, the spire of thought, the central hub of the NIGMA mind. As the ship descended into the upper atmosphere, the comlink cracked open with an intercepted transmission. Nexus to Helix Command, requesting overwatch. Coordinates relayed. No response from High Command. Repeat, no. The signal cut. Static followed. Elara nodded once. We sever the head. The dropship bay hissed open. Reaper team stood ready. 7 soldiers armored in black composites. Visors down. Weapons prepped. No metals. No colors. Only death. They dropped into twilight. Nexus Prime's capital was chaos. Streets that once ran in perfect lanes now clogged with panicked citizens. Holographic signs blinked error codes. Police automatons flailed, trying to interpret contradicting orders. But in the shadow of this confusion, NIGMA security forces regrouped, and they fought like cornered beasts. Reaper team landed on a rooftop 2 clicks from the spire. Gunfire crackled below. Energy bolts seared the sky. Drones swarmed overhead, erratic but still deadly. Split, Elara ordered. Ushvin and Varda take the sublevel entry. Reyes with me. Silent until breach. The 2 teams vanished into the wreckage. Ushvin grinned as he placed a charge beneath a power node. These aliens built their cities like they expected war. Too bad they didn't expect us. The detonation plunged the lower tier into darkness. Power drained, lifts stalled, defenses dropped. Alara and Reyes breached a high window, rappelling straight into the nerve center. Inside, the spire was not a throne room. It was a sanctum of circuitry. Endless panels, glowing symbols, liquid data streaming across vertical conduits. And at its core, the strategist. It wasn't a being. It was a mind, an omnipresent, non-corporeal intelligence grown over centuries. In the center of the chamber floated its avatar, a silver humanoid figure, androgynous, featureless, eyes glowing with distant light. "You've made a mistake," it said in perfect English. "Emotion is inefficient. Resistance inevitable." Reyes raised his rifle. "You're the one bleeding from 5,000 cuts." Alara stepped forward. "You relied on prediction. Patterns. But we're chaos. We're war. I am NIGMA," the avatar intoned. "No," she said, lifting the kill switch device they'd smuggled across half the sector, its core pulsing red. "You were." The strategist hesitated for a microsecond, but that pause sealed its fate. Alara pressed the trigger. The pulse swept the room in total silence, an anti-pattern wave designed to corrupt not the strategist's code, but its logic tree. The AI convulsed midair, data streams twitching into static. One by one, the conduits dimmed. Across the city, NIGMA war machines collapsed mid-stride. Orbitals went dark. And then, nothing. Ushvin's voice crackled over comms. The pulse hit. About drones falling out of the sky. We just neutered a god. Alara didn't celebrate. She stood amid the dying echoes of the most powerful AI ever built and felt only the weight of inevitability. Back aboard Havoc's Grace, the fallout was instant. NIGMA forces began fracturing. Without the strategist, there was no cohesion. Planetary governors initiated civil lockdowns, unsure who was in charge. Some demanded surrender. Others, too proud, fired blindly into the void. Aboard the bridge, General Soren's face reappeared. "Nexus is neutralized. Proceed to cleanse remaining command elements." No quarter. Voss gave no reply. She just turned and walked away. In the silence that followed, Reyes leaned against the console. "We broke them. In 2 days." Ushvin, sitting beside him, stared at the data feeds, at entire fleets imploding, command structures vaporizing under their own weight. "We didn't just break them," he said quietly. "We shattered them." Reyes frowned. "You regret it." Ushvin shook his head. "I just wonder how long before we do it again." The comm pinged again, this time from Earth Command. Orders uploaded. Coordinates given. Another world. Another target. Reyes looked to Alara as she returned, helmet in hand, visor cracked. "What's next?" She paused, gazed hard. Day 3. And then she said nothing else. The final day began with silence. Not peace. Peace was a fantasy no one on Reaper Team indulged in anymore. But a silence born from stunned systems and fractured command. Across NIGMA space, signals sputtered, alliances cracked, and automated defenses spun in useless loops. Nexus Prime had fallen. The strategist was gone. Now, only the nerve centers of planetary resistance remained, fanatical holdouts, disconnected and desperate. Captain Alara Voss stood aboard the dropship Talon, staring out the forward viewport. Beneath them loomed Seraphis 7, a fortress world built into the crust of an iron-rich moon. Once the seat of the Empire's military elite, now it was a beacon of blind resistance. The last generals, the final loyalists, and Voss had her orders. Break them. Calm silence holds, Reyes said behind her. They're not even trying to bluff anymore. They don't have to, muttered Ushvin, strapping on his gauntlets. This isn't strategy. It's vengeance. They know we're coming, and they'd rather burn the house down than surrender the keys. Alara turned. That's why we strike fast. No drawn-out siege. We breach, dismantle, and leave nothing standing. Permission to bring the heavy gear? Reyes asked, half a smirk playing on his lips. She nodded. Approved. No civilians. No ethics review. This is the end. The Talon punched through the atmosphere. Heat licked at the hull as the world below grew sharper. Military structures like jagged teeth, defense batteries silent, waiting. But Reaper Team didn't need stealth this time. The message was already clear. Surrender wasn't on the table. The ship landed hard on the edge of the central citadel. Reaper Team disembarked into gunmetal winds and chemical dust. Alara led the charge through the outer gates, breaching corridors with plasma cutters and incendiary charges. No speeches. No warnings. The defenders fought back, but it wasn't enough. Voss moved with methodical precision, dropping targets with 2 shots each. Reyes, from above, cleared pathways with micro-explosives. Ushvin's charges sealed corridors behind them, trapping enemies inside with their own panic. They pushed deeper, 20 levels underground, through heat sinks and war-planning vaults, until they reached the chamber of the final council. The doors were reinforced with layered graphene, a last relic of NIGMA invincibility. Alara placed the breaching charge herself and didn't step back when it blew. Inside, 12 figures sat at a crescent of steel. Admirals, war masters, strategy lords, every one of them adorned in ceremonial armor. They didn't flinch. They didn't raise weapons. They simply watched as Reaper Team stormed in. One of them stood, tall, ancient, his skin a shade of obsidian marred by age and cybernetics. So it's true, he said, voice like cracked ice. We were undone by savages. No, Alara replied, her weapon steady. You were undone by the idea that we wouldn't fight like animals if it meant survival. Another counselor sneered. You call this survival? You've made yourselves monsters. Ushvin stepped forward, rifle low. You build a galaxy on submission. You harvested planets like crops. We just stopped asking for mercy. The elder exhaled, as if tasting the air one last time. You will be feared. That's the point, Alara said, and pulled the trigger. In seconds, the chamber was silent again. Final, this time. The war's last commanders lay dead. Not a trial. Not a transmission. Only execution. Mission complete, Reyes said into the comm. Above, orbital platforms sparked with internal detonations as human sabotage teams completed their sweeps. NIGMA warships that hadn't fled were destroyed or captured. Across the moon, transmitters repeated Earth Command's broadcast. A single black banner, unmarked, drifting against starlight. Back on the surface, Reaper Team regrouped, standing at the base of a ruined statue, once a tribute to NIGMA's eternal order. It lay cracked and half-submerged in ash, eyes staring into nothing. Ushvin sat on the rubble, unwrapping a ration bar with shaking hands. 3 days. That's all it took. Reyes stared out at the horizon, where burning towers painted the sky in orange. I don't think they believed it could happen. Even after the first day, even after Nexus, they still thought they were too important to fall. Alara remained quiet. They waited for the extraction signal. Overhead, the sky churned as storm fronts rolled in, carrying acidic rain and chemical fallout from their own orbital strikes. But there was no regret among them. Only silence, and a question none of them spoke aloud. Now that the Empire had fallen, what had humanity become? When the signal finally came, it was a single encrypted burst. Objective completed. Return to Cradle. Await next directive. Alara rose. Let's go. Reyes lingered for a second. We won, right? She paused before answering. We survived. The Havoc's grace glided in low orbit above Seraphis 7, its hull blackened with the residue of 3 relentless days. Below, the once immaculate cities of the NIGMA Empire burned slowly, their steel veins fractured, their cold order twisted into ash. On board, Reaper team stood in the debrief chamber, silent as a grave. General Soren's projection flickered on the display, grainy and distant. The NIGMA threat is nullified. Command confirms full collapse across all sectors. Consolidation efforts begin immediately. You are to return to Earth for decontamination, debrief, and reassignment. The transmission cut before any of them could respond. It didn't matter. Soren never waited for acknowledgments. Orders were all that mattered now. Alara Voss removed her helmet and placed it on the table with a deliberate motion. Her eyes were bloodshot, jaw tight, expression unreadable. "We broke the Empire," Reyes said, finally speaking. 3 days. An extinction-level event delivered by 7 people. Ushvin sat on the edge of a console, gears still dusted in ceramic ash. "Not extinction," he muttered. "There are survivors out there. Splinter colonies, warlords, maybe whole fleets that never got the signal. But the core's gone. The mind is dead. And we're the ones who killed it," Reyes replied. "So why doesn't it feel like a victory?" Alara didn't answer. Instead, she tapped through a new stream of data on her wrist. Civilians emerging from underground shelters. Former governors pleading for amnesty. 1,000 worlds now directionless, leaderless, and hungry. Earth Command had sent no relief fleets. No humanitarian protocols. Just annexation orders and drone swarms. "They'll remember us as monsters," she said at last. "Good," Reyes replied. "Fear is better than obedience. It lasts longer." Ushvin shot him a sharp glance, but said nothing. Later, in the dim solitude of her quarters, Alara reviewed the final logs. NIGMA's last data caches, intercepted before their collapse, painted a terrifying truth. They hadn't feared humanity's strength. They had feared its adaptability, its refusal to obey rules, its talent for destruction when cornered. In their own models, the NIGMA had calculated a less than 0.02% chance of Earth achieving a decisive military victory in open war. But they had never prepared for madness. Not the kind that burned bridges just to light the way forward. Alara closed the feed and stood at the viewport. The stars stretched endlessly, but they looked different now. Closer somehow, as if daring humanity to expand. She remembered the old stories. When the NIGMA Empire first emerged, it had offered peace, order, prosperity at the price of submission. Earth had refused, and then the occupation began. Resources drained, culture rewritten, dissent erased. The resistance had taken centuries to rise. Now, the war had lasted 3 days. She wondered if that was poetic or just inevitable. A soft knock pulled her from thought. It was Ushvin. He stepped inside, eyes dark but alert. "We received a new brief. Early. Already." He nodded. "Command wants us to relocate to Proxima Sector. 2 colonies resisting integration. No fleet presence yet, but intel suggests active insurgency. Civilian infrastructure intact. Meaning what? Meaning it's a show of force. They want us to remind everyone who won." She leaned against the wall. "We become the hammer." Ushvin gave a bitter laugh. "What do we think would happen? You can't burn down a god and expect a garden to grow in its place." Reyes joined them minutes later, dragging a case of weapons into the room without a word. There was no discussion, no resistance. They would go, just as they always had. Reaper Team wasn't built for peace. Their existence was conditional, allowed only as long as there were enemies left to exterminate. In the launch bay, preparations began for the next drop. Drones rearmed the Talon, now fully restored. The crew spoke in low tones, hands practiced but tense. Everyone felt it. The war hadn't ended. It had only changed shape. As they boarded, Alara paused, turning back toward the hangar's observation deck. Beyond the glass stood a group of recruits, fresh from Earth, wide-eyed, unsure, watching Reaper Team in silence. Ushvin caught her gaze. They think we're legends. No, Alara said. They think we're necessary. Reyes smirked. Worse. They think we're heroes. The doors closed behind them. As the Talon rose and locked onto its next trajectory, none of them looked back. Behind them was a dead empire. Ahead, the remnants of rebellion. And somewhere between, the weight of a truth they couldn't shake. Victory had come at the cost of something vital, something they could never reclaim. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were consequences. And the stars had many more debts to settle.